Hello everybody, this is Astocky here, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your own DayZ server. Basically, there's been a lot of people interested in making their own servers, aren't really sure how to do it. There's a lot of really bad information out there, particularly about battle filters and other different things. It really is so simple, so I thought I would just show you guys how to do it. So the very first thing you're going to need to do is come to this website just here called DayZ Private Server. Now, as you can see here, this is 1.7.7.1, so it's the very latest version of all the files. Comes with a pretty clear set of instructions on how to install it. Basically there's two ways that you can do this. If you want to run this on the computer that you play DayZ on, that's just fine as long as you have a reasonably fast PC. I find that's much easier to do. You can also, and if you follow their instructions, particularly the part here about copying a whole lot of files and copying a whole lot of directories, that can be used to, for example, run it off another system that isn't the place where you've installed and play your Arma 2 and DayZ from. But before we get to that, let's get the files. So these are all the files here. When you come to this GitHub, which I'll put in the description, you basically want to come over to the right here and click Download as Zip. So we click on that, it gives the name DayZ Private Master Server Master. So I'm going to go to my games folder, my DayZ folder where I save everything, and I'm going to put it in there. But what I'm going to do is, hopefully, I should have saved this once and already renamed it. Maybe I have not. Well, never mind. Dash 1.7.7.1. So there we go. So we've now downloaded the files. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to get this particular thing just here, which is Apache Friends XAMPP. This is basically a server administration program that allows you to run your own SQL server, which is something that's needed to get this to run. So basically, if you've got Windows, get XAMPP for Windows. You basically, I know there's a download button here somewhere. I clicked on it the other day. There we go, download. So it comes in 3 different flavors: installer, zip, or 7-zip. Just download the installer. That's really the easiest. It doesn't really matter where you install it, but you basically just need to install it. And I'm pretty sure it doesn't pop up with any crazy questions or anything like that. But if you're installing it and you have any concerns about what it's doing, just let me know and I'm happy to help. But basically that will install and that will set that all up for you, so everything's good to go. So you have XAMPP downloaded, installed, and you have these files downloaded. Now we're ready to move to the next step. So the very next step, if I can get this window out of the way, is to go to your Arma 2 Operation Arrowhead folder. Now for me, I use Steam, so it's under wherever you installed Steam, Steam Apps Common, Arma 2 Operation Arrowhead. If you have the CD version of it, it could be like C drive program files, or basically wherever you installed it, but you want to be in this particular folder. Now that's the bit that has the Arma 2 OA server and Arma 2 OA in it. Now it's important, before you try and run the server, that you make sure you have the latest beta version. Now if you use Steam like I do, you will have to basically run and install Arma 2, run and install Arma 2 Operation Arrowhead, then get Steam to install the beta, and then run and install the beta. Now once you've done that, you should be good. This particular folder here called add-ons, it may or may not be empty. If the folder is empty or that folder is not even there, you need to come back to your Arma 2 folder and copy this entire add-ons folder. So just like right click, say copy, and then paste that under Arma 2 Operation Arrowhead. That will copy all of the add-ons from Arma 2 over to Arma 2 Operation Arrowhead, which is what will allow you to run, basically allow you to run the server. So now that I have that particular part, well, I've already got that done because I've been running a server for some time. The next thing that I would suggest that you do is, this is how I do it anyway, because this is the easiest way to do it. You want the DayZCommander. So it's the very first link. This I find is just the easiest way to do it. But basically what you want to do is you want to come down here, scroll down, click on this blue button just here, and that will download the installer. Then once you've installed it, now like I said, you have to have installed and run Armor 2 Operation Arrowhead and the beta, you will have like a DayZCommander shortcut. So you'll double click on that, and once that comes up, it will start searching for servers. Ignore that part, click on Install Update, and you'll want to come to here, and you'll want to, I've already got it installed, but make sure this is selected for latest, and make sure that's installed. And you'll also have to come up to here, and make sure you have the latest stable build of the Armor 2 beta. And then you click on Install, and that will automatically update it all. So once you've done that, you've now got DayZ installed correctly, you've now got the beta installed correctly, everything should pretty much be ready to go to start working on the server. So we're going to grab that zip file that I had a moment ago, D drive, games, DayZ, going to find my DayZ zip file that I just saved, there we go. So this has inside of it all of the files that you need for the server. So you open it up and you can see them all there. It has a whole lot of stuff that allows you to have your own SQL server running, and it even has a little readmd file that basically takes you through the process of installing it all. Now, like I said, whoops, sorry about that, a couple of different ways you can do it. I tend not to do it quite the same way that these guys do it, but you can see here there's all of these files, and basically what you want to do is you want to go to your Armor 2 Operation Arrowhead folder, grab everything that is in the zip file, and copy it here. Now, like I said, in my case, I've already got a bunch of the stuff, so I'm not necessarily going to need it all, but this will let you create your own, standalone server. So we can see it's fairly sizable. The biggest part of it is actually all the MySQL stuff. Now I'm going to do let me decide for each file, and the reason for that is because some of these files I already have copies of, and I don't necessarily want to mess with them. But you know what? Let's just, as an example, let's just copy over everything. That won't really hurt. So you can see there's a number of files that it created. I'm going to keep this over here to the side just so we can see it a little bit, because it's going to become important when we look at different pieces of it, how we get it to run. So the first thing we're going to do, that is the shortcut to run the server. We're going to open that up and we're going to edit it. So you can see what it does here is it will start the SQL database, make sure that the SQL database is working, then it will create the script to basically log it all in, and then again ping null, and then it will try and start the server. And I'll just bring that back in a little bit so you guys can see better. And then once it's done all that, it will every now and then just check the server and just make sure that it's working. So this is basically a single everything works by itself type server start file, which is really fantastic. It makes it super easy that it came with that. For those of you who don't necessarily want to do it that way, there are a lot of other ways that you can do it, but the simplest way is just to double click on that file and it will run and it will set the server up. Because I've got you to install the XAMPP part of it, you basically don't need this folder that's the MySQL folder, and that's 185 meg that you don't need, except for there's a single file in there that you do need, and that's why I've got the zip file open over here. You want this file here called DayZ 1.77.sql. Now it doesn't really matter where you copy that file, so I'm just going to put it in this root folder here, but you need that SQL file. That's basically your schema file. Now everything else that's in there is not needed. So what we're going to do is we are going to come back up to this root folder here where all the files are, just so we can see the names of each of the folders that are going to be used. So for example, if we go into multiplayer missions, there's DayZ1 Shanaris, and we can see here DayZ1 Shanaris. That's just how we know, I guess, which bit is which. So we've got all of the files there. The next thing we need to do is we need to actually create the server. So the way we create the server is, and I'll have to minimize everything to desktop again, we need to open up XAMPP. Now, once you've got this running and installed, it'll come up just like this. And what you want to do is you want to go to Apache and hit Start. And that will start the Apache services that you need. If you're using Skype, or you want to use Skype while you're on the server, you'll have to go into Skype, go into Tools, I think it's Connections, and one of the options is use alternate ports, and it'll say port 80 and port, I think it's 443, but there's two ports that it uses, and as you can see here, at least one of them is the same as the Apache server it's running. So because at least one of them is the same, that's bad. You don't want to have that happen. So you have to uncheck that option in Skype. Now once we've got Apache running and it comes up green, we go to MySQL and we click Start on that as well. It will now start up, it will detect, it will start running, and then you want to click on the admin button. Now what that will do is that will open your web browser and that will connect to your local server. And that's basically, I'm logged in now to the manager for it. Now this is the reason why I like this particular version, because it has all the tools that you need to look at all your SQL tables and do different things in it. So we need to go to database now, and we need to create a new database. This particular database I am going to give the same name as they give to the mission file, just because I think that's the cleanest way to do it. So we're going to go into MP missions, and we're going to call it that name just there. I'm going to get rid of the dot though, because I don't think it likes dots. But you're going to see I'm going to call it that name just there, DayZ_1_Chernarus, and then you click create, and it creates a new database basically with no name, and you can see it over here. The next thing you're going to need to do is go to users, and I already have it here, but what you want to do is you want to click add user. You want to give the username DayZ. You want the host to be localhost. Now like I said, if you were putting this on a different computer, the host name would have to be the host that you had the computer running on. So that makes it a bit more complicated, which is why I keep it on the same system. You then want to put a password in, you then want to retype the same password in. Now you want to come down here and you want to go to global privileges, check all. And that will by default give you access to all of the information, all of the databases. Like I said, I'm not going to do that because I already have that username here. DayZ localhost, yes, all privileges. And as an example now, if we click to DayZ1Chernarus, so you click on it to make sure that it's selected that particular database up the top here, and go to, there should have been a users bit for that. Let's try breaking point. Okay, clearly I'm doing something wrong. Maybe we have to go to edit privileges to see it. There we go, edit privileges, database breaking point has all privileges. So I can now go to, I'm sure that was how I did it. Never mind. We're going to go back to the DayZ server, which is this server just here, and we're going to click on import. Now this is very important. We have to import the SQL file that we extracted before, so it knows to lay the database out in the same format as the DayZ database. So we click on choose file, and in this particular case we want to go to games. I'm using my shortcut to where it's installed, but this is where you've installed Steam. And you can see if we scroll right down, there's only one single SQL file there, which is the one we just extracted. So we hit open, and then we come down and we click go. Now this, depending on the size of the database, can take a few minutes, but you can see here it has imported it in, successfully imported it. And now if we click over here on DayZ and click on tables, you can see there's a bunch of tables there, a bunch of procedures. There's all the information that it should need to have. Although it did import a lot less records than I thought it was going to. But again, that's not a big deal. The important thing is that it comes up saying that it has successfully imported all of the information. So now that we have it configured as such, what we want to do is again make sure that under the users, the user DayZ localhost has access to it. Then we can minimize that back down because that's basically out of the way now. We can also minimize XAMPP because that's out of the way as well. So now we go back to our folder here, and again I'm bringing up 7-zip just to show you what they were. So we look here, there's a file called CFG DayZ. So that's the file that we want to open up. So we're going to come up and go to CFG DayZ. This is our configuration file for the server. This tells us every bit of information it needs to know about the server. So we're going to right click on server.cfg. I use Notepad++, but whatever program you use to edit things. I have to resize this for you, sorry about this. Try and make sure it all fits in the window. There we go. So you can see there's a whole lot of information in here about the private server. Now, the host name, you can call this whatever you want. The important thing is, there's a couple of different things you have to have. The first thing you do is you put in, like in my case, you put in the server name. So it's A&J Stockwell DayZ. Now the next thing you do is you put country code. And in my particular case, that's US. Now the next thing we do is we have here what version you need to have of Armor 2 and DayZ to be able to run the mod. So 1.7.7.1 is correct, and that's the correct beta. Now the next thing you have to do is you have to set up a couple of parameters in here that describe what the server features are. And the easiest way to find out what those are is just to open again DayZCommander, which we had open a minute ago. And you can see when servers start to come up that they all have the same format, at least once it stops. So they have they're constantly moving on me. How frustrating! So you can see they have a couple of different things. They have, it should be in square brackets. So this one here, it's moved again. Darn it! Not all of these have done it correctly, and some of them you can see how they grayed out. If they're grayed out, that means they generally don't meet all of the naming requirements. I'm going to hang on to this one though, because that one definitely meets all of them. So you have to open square brackets, and then you have what type of difficulty server it is. Then you have 3DP, whether it's on or off, which is whether you have third person view allowed. Then you have crosshair, again on or off, and then you have in square brackets again what the time is that you've got set on the server. So I'm going to open this up and just type that in just as a I guess just as a little bit of an example of what it should look like. So then we have 3DP on, because I'm going to make sure I leave that on. And in case you're wondering, if you've got a US keyboard, the key under the backspace, which is backslash, if you hold down shift and hit the one above that, that gives you the symbol that I'm using. Then we want CH for crosshair, and again it's going to be on my server. And then we close that, and then the time setting that we're going to have is, in my case, it's going to be UTC or GMT plus 12, because that's the time. That means that normally when I get on the server to play it at night, it's going to be daytime. And then you can kind of put anything you want after that, but as long as you have that information, it should be good. Now the next thing that you're going to want, if you're running a private server like I'm going to be, is you're going to want to put in here a password. So I'm just going to put DayZ1234. Now you're going to want to grab this line just here. You can change your admin password. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to use the same admin password as the password because this is just a temporary server. But you're going to want to copy this next line and you're going to want to paste it. And then put 2 forward slashes in to comment the first one out, and then change the second one to be 127.0.0.1. And what that means, it will only report it as a LAN server. That's important, and the reason why that is important is when you're doing your testing, you don't want it to be reporting the server online just in case you have some issues with it. So we've got a server name now. You can come down here now if you want, and you can change the welcome server messages. You can kind of change whatever you want. I don't think that's necessary. Come down here to players. This is totally up to you how this works. I pick 5 players. I've basically got a 3 megabit upload, and I find 5 players is a good number. I'm running the server on my PC, so it's a good compromise between like having lots of people and having lots of load versus not doing it. So here we've got the required build set to be the same build, which is the latest. The voting, basically, I'm not entirely sure what this particular bit does. I haven't seen that used before, so I don't know what to do with that. The next thing are these other bits about how the server works. If you change persistence to 0, basically what that means is the entire server stops the moment the last player disconnects and then kind of restarts itself when they reconnect. Persistence is just the easiest. Now the very last thing you're going to want to do, in this section anyway, is change this to 0 for BattlEye, which basically just turns it off. You're only broadcasting locally, so you're not going to have problems with hackers or anything like that, and this is just the easiest thing to do for testing. So once you've done that, you can just scroll down a little bit. We've got these things down here that say on unsigned data, which means if it detects something that's unusual. On hacked data, it basically just tells it what to do with people if it detects certain issues. So you can see here the difficulty is regular, which is right at the very bottom. That's a setup for the mission. So I'm going to come back up and change this to say regular, because that's now going to match up, and that's also going to match up with crosshair on and third person on. So that's all of the setup that you need to do. It's pretty simple. If you want, you can change this value here to 0 as well if you're planning on doing any testing of your own server, where maybe you might want to include some hack scripts or anything like that. So maybe you can check to make sure the vehicle spawns work and all that kind of stuff. It's totally up to you how you do it. I normally leave that on 2, which means that it only wants version 2 signatures for files, which means certain older files won't work. It makes it a bit less exploitable, but really it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. Anyway, we're going to save that now, and we're going to open back up the same folder. There's another one in here, Armor 2 CFG. We can open that up. Now this is where it sets up the size of the files for the server that runs. So it's not worth changing any of these, because changing any of these won't affect what people see. It's the server.cfg that affects that. It's mainly just for, and you'll see it once I actually pop the server up, how that works. Now the last thing you're going to want to edit at this stage is this hive.ext.ini file. Again, these are things that don't actually affect anything, but they're files that the server needs to be able to run. So we're going to open up hive.ext.ini. Again, I use Notepad++ because it's just really easy. Now here is basically all of the detail for your server. So you can see here that pretty much everything at the moment is all blacked out. That's okay. I'm going to close down DayZCommander because I don't need it. So you have lots of different types of server that you can have. So like I said, I'm going to set mine as a custom. So I'm going to uncomment out type and change that to custom. If you leave it out, it by default sets it to the first option. So now that I have custom, I want this option just here. So we want to set an offset, and we want to set the offset to be 12 to make it GMT plus 12. These two settings here don't apply, so we can leave them off because we're not using static. Then we come down to logger. We wish to log information, so we have that set up like that. We come down to console level, again we want information, so just to make sure that it forces it, we're going to uncomment those out. Separate console true, that's just so it pops up a separate console window that we can look in. Now, down here to database. Now, as long as you've set up the database correctly in XAMPP like we have, and you have it running, you can see here the host code is going to be 127.0.0.1. That's what we set it up at before when we set up the local host server. It is a MySQL database, which is what we have here, MySQL. The port that it's running on, 3306. You can see that that matches the port we have just here for our MySQL server. The database name, it's saying HiveMind, but we know that we didn't create it called HiveMind. So what did we call it? We called it DayZ_1_Shanaris. So we're going to copy that, and we're going to come in here and we're going to paste that. Then it's going to ask for the username and the password to connect to the server. The username we saw was DayZ, and you didn't see me create it, but the password is DayZ. And then we can come down here and we can set up characters if we want to change anything that happens with that. Again, I just kind of like to force these to the default, so I just show that they're there. And then again, we can leave all this stuff here blank. You can set up an object database if you want. Again, we're going to say use false, which means it doesn't use a separate database for objects, it uses the same one. Not a huge amount that really needs to be changed in the bottom part of this, but you just want to kind of set it up like that anyway. So I'm going to pause the video for a moment, and then I'm going to open up my DayZ in the background. Actually, just quickly before I do that, DayZCommander by default will have a lot of trouble finding your server when it first comes on, and it won't find it at all when you try and play it locally. That's just how it works. It has to do some online verification, so there's no way you can test this server by default using DayZ. So what you want to do is come to your Arma 2 Operation Arrowhead folder, and in here you will have a file, a shortcut anyway, called Launch Arma 2 OA Beta Patch. Basically you want to copy that, and then you want to change the name of it to something simple like Launch DayZ. Then you want to go to Properties and edit it, and here's what it says for those of you who might need to manually type it out for some reason because you can't find it. Goes a little bit slow. You can see it's launching the Arma 2 OA that's in the beta folder. It's launching it with all the expansions turned on with no splash screen. You then want to do space dash mod and then say equals the @ symbol DayZ, because that's how it's named. So just to confirm, come up, it's DayZ. I might actually make sure that it's in the same capitalization. That won't matter because I'm using Windows and Windows doesn't care, but some systems may in the future. So just in case, let's just make sure it's the same. We hit apply. Now that shortcut, launch DayZ, will now run DayZ. So I'm going to pause the video and launch my DayZ up. I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. So I now have my DayZ running. So the very next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come to this very first file here that we looked at, and we're going to want to open that file up. Now this is the file that will start the server. Now you can see here I've already edited it. It will look different than the basic. Basically what I have done is I have added capital letters REM space, and I just did the first one, and then after that I went copy and then like click paste the whole way down. You want to do that to all of the lines except for echo starting server and start, and then I was just putting that there for testing, and then the last line exit you want to leave. So you want to basically, and you can even just take them out completely so that they're not there, but I just thought I would show you that they're all remmed so that they're still there. I've just turned them off, and I haven't touched this line here at all. I left it exactly how it is. We've edited this, and we've edited this, and we've edited the CFG DayZ. So we've basically edited everything to set it up the way that it needs to be to run the server. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say yes, we want to save that, and same as this file here, we want to make sure again that this is correct and that the port matches what we were seeing, and then we want to make sure we save that and then close it. And now we're ready. We can double click on Start Server. It will pop up in the center with this little thing here, which is the loading the dedicated server. Well, it's actually loading any kind of Arma 2 thing, application I guess you'd call it, instance. And now that it's running, you can see it's kind of doing nothing, and then this window up here will pop up which says dedicated host created, host identity created. Now if we had BattleEye turned on, it would also now pop up saying that BattleEye was running and that it was working. Now I've run servers on this system before, but during a number of stages of this you will probably get pop-ups that talk about allowing access. You have to make sure you allow access for all of these programs, because if you don't, the server is going to have a lot of trouble when it tries to communicate properly and work with people over the internet. So once that's created, I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to come back once I'm in DayZ and show you how to connect to it to test it. So I will be back in just 1 second. Okay, so here we are. We are in DayZ now. You can see up here it says I'm running Arma 2 DayZ mod expansion and beta. You can see 1.62.103, which is the beta version, running DayZ 1.7.7, so everything is the way it should be. So we will click on multiplayer, Now here it's on internet. I'm not broadcasting on the internet, so you won't see it, but if you click on LAN, there we go, it shows up. ANJ stock or DayZ, there's the versions, it's regular, all those settings that we changed. So we can now double click and it will ask for the password. You will see me put it in, so it's no secret, and then we click OK, and then it will come up waiting for host. Now once this menu pops up, you can see there's no milliseconds because I'm running on the same system. You click OK, it will come up waiting for host. Then once the host responds, it should change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video now and then just quickly tab back out and then show you what's happening outside in the server part while this is going on here locally. So back in just a moment. Okay, so we can see out here while this is happening in the server, and it would be much easier if I could have two separate monitors that record at the same time. You can see Astocky uses a modified data file. I don't actually know what that means. I'm using the default DayZ that it downloads from DayZCommander. I haven't changed anything, but it always comes up with that, so not totally sure. But then Astocky connecting, mission DayZ mod read from directory, which is good. That means it's read the mission file off the server. I've now connected. It gives you my unique ID. It then assigns me a role, which is either male or female. Reads the mission. Mission is correctly read, and we can see over here Hive extension that it's connecting, and it's connected to the MySQL database correctly. It's reading, writing, it's setting up all the information it needs to. That means everything has worked. So again, gonna pause the video, and I'll be back in game in a second. Okay, so here we are. That's not exactly what I was expecting. I was thinking more or less that it would take me to a menu that looks a lot like this and has an OK button. But what probably happened is it probably timed out while I was demonstrating that. But you can see I'm here. You have the server control option that you can log into with that admin password you had if you need to. And once you're in the admin, you can restart the server and do a bunch of different things in there. But we don't want to do those. Basically what you do want to see is that all of the things you set up are working correctly. So in this case, that is you have a crosshair, you have a third person type view and a first person type view, and you probably also want to just have a quick run around and just make sure that zombies and things spawn in the way that you would expect them to. That definitely sounded like a zombie. There he is. Hey Mr. Zombie Man. He's going to kick my butt. So we're not going to demonstrate that. Now, what will probably not have spawned at this stage is vehicles. But see, they've hit me. I'm now infected. I've got the coughing. I've got the bleeding. Everything is working in just that fun way that only DayZ can. I'm going to have to just run for 30 seconds now because, unfortunately for me, I can't abort while I'm in combat. So, just running, and bleeding, running and bleeding. Might even be a bit simpler if I just kill myself. Bleeding from my arm. What a silly place to bleed from. Just kill me. That'll be quicker. Come on, there's three of you. Kill me. Bleeding rather fast now. Oop, they've broken my leg, so I can just lay down. And now I'm unconscious, and now I'm dead. Astocky was killed. So, again, I'm going to stop the video and go back to the server console and just... Actually, before I do that, press escape. I'm going to go to abort, return to the lobby, yes, and disconnect. Disconnect again, so I'm completely disconnected from the server. Now what I'm going to do is pause the video, Alt-Tab out, and just show you a couple of things that are going on. Okay, so here we have over the left, you can see game started, when the game was started, and then that I disconnected. So you can see that's all working the way that it should. And here we have a bit of information. What does it say? It tells you what information I ended up with when I basically started. Everything kind of worked. There was basically no errors. So now, in order to stop the server, what you want to do is, once you're sure that there's no one on there, you want to close this Hive extension, and you can see that in closing the Hive extension it closed the other part as well, and they both disappear. That's important. If you close the white window that was up here on the left, it'll leave the black Hive extension connection open, and I'll be honest, I don't know what that's going to do. I haven't done it myself, but I'm sure it's not that great. Now what we can do is we can go back to XAMPP, and this is the reason why I said this is probably the best thing to use. We can now go to admin, and we're back where we were. We bring up the DayZ, actually I've already got a couple of windows of this open. Bring up the tables, and if we go to player data, you can see now that we have a player data for Astocky. So there's my player ID, my morality, we have player login instances, which says when people logged in. We have character data. Now this line here holds all of the information for my character that just happened. So he's the first one that's been on the server. My unique Armor 2 login identifier. We've got the date stamp, the last login. We've got the inventory that I was carrying, what my backpack has, what my location was, my status, whether I'm alive or not. 0 is clearly not alive. When I last ate, when I last drank, how far I ran, kills, headshots, duration, what my mod was, what my humanity was. You know, it stores all that information about you. This is really cool because you have the ability, if you wish, to edit these values. So let's say, for example, and it says you can edit most things by double clicking on them. I could come in here, double click, and then I could change this to have an extra comma bandage at the end. So an extra this bit, and I'm dead. But if I was not dead, what that would actually do is that would add an extra bandage to my inventory. You can do a number of things like that. You can also look at this world space here, and that'll give you the rough GPS coordinates of where someone is. I think that's kind of cool as a server admin, particularly when you're testing, because if you were to add something like the self Bloodbag script, the best way to test that is to have a Bloodbag, and the best way to get a Bloodbag is to log in. Once you're logged into the server, abort, log back out. So alive will say 1. You can then come into here, you can then edit your inventory and add item Bloodbag, and then voila, you have a Bloodbag. But that is going to be a topic for another video. So you can see that everything worked, everything ran correctly. It saved all the information the way that it should about the player and about the world that's going on. The very next thing I'm going to cover is a little bit different, and I'm going to have to give credit to somebody else for this, but if you just bear with me for 1 second, I'll get that ready and then we'll be right back. Okay guys, so here we are, we're back. We've got the XAMPP control panel running, and I have reconnected back to the server in the same way that I did before. Now off camera I've created a separate database. This is one that is just called DayZ_Shanaris. It doesn't have the 1 in there, it's just a basic empty database, and the reason I created this is when we were showing before, I was showing you the character data and character dead and that kind of stuff to show you that there is information contained within this database. You can see this one here has object classes, which gives you the information about all the vehicles, object spawns, which tell you where all the vehicles are, but under object data there are no vehicles. Now you can see here's the one that I was playing on. You can see here under object data it actually is full. Well, how did I make it fill up? And that's why I created this spare database, so I could demonstrate it to you. Basically, when you open it up and click on functions, there are 4 functions here that are basically set up within the SQL database for the server. Now the first one is rand spawn, and basically it just decides if it's going to do a bee spawn. Now it itself isn't something that you need to run, it's required for these other ones. Now basically the first script here is cleanup. So the first thing it does is call p cleanup OOB. So the first thing it does is it runs this script here. And what this script does is it basically goes through, checks for every object in the game, and checks to see if they're within the area of the map that's considered to be an acceptable area of the map. And if they're not, it deletes them. What that does is it checks for things that for some reason have got out of bounds or have somehow ended up spawning in an area that's incorrect, and it will delete them. The next thing the cleanup script does after that is it goes to the table that we were showing earlier that had my character, and it basically deletes any character that's dead. It then also looks for any vehicle that's destroyed, so 100% damage, and deletes it. it then also deletes any vehicle that hasn't been driven for 14 days and basically resets it to its spawn point. It deletes tents, it deletes empty tents, deletes barbed wire, tank traps, etc, 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 and it basically just goes through and cleans up all the information the server's storing that it might not need to store. So that's really cool. So basically what you do is you just come in here, and when you want to do it, you shut your server down in the same way that we did before, and then you click execute. There you go, executed successfully, everything was done. The next thing you can do is you come down here and you go to pmain. Now what pmain does is it comes in, calls the cleanup script, so you could run this and it'll run both of them. The next thing it does is it checks for different items and it checks for different vehicles to make sure that basically that they are the right number of them. You know, if number of vehicles is less than vehicle spawn max, then it spawns vehicles in for you. So what we're going to do now is just run that and demonstrate what it does. So we click execute here. You can see it's loading. SQL is now completed. So now if we go to object data, we can see that we have 30 vehicle spawns, which is the default number of vehicle spawns that are set up in a DayZ map. You can see we've got a UH1H at those coordinates just there. We've got a Skoda, a Icarus, a Datsun, a Land Rover, a UAZ, a second Datsun. So it just has randomly spawned vehicles in all the locations where the vehicles need to be. So I had already done that for this other database, which is why I had to create the new one to show you, because I did it off camera just to make sure it would work correctly. So what I'm going to do now is do one last thing, and that's show you how to do some port forwarding. So what we're going to do here is we're going to, in this case, I'm going to log into my server. Well, sorry, not my server, my router information page. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to port forwarding. Now, for a DayZ server, you need to pick your IP. That's the IP for my computer, and the way you find that is you open up a command prompt window and type IP config. You can see just there I'm connected to the wireless adapter because that's the only one that's plugged in, and you can see 192.168.0.16. So 0.16 is all set up. Now the ports you need to forward are 2302 through 2305. 2302 through 2305, same internal, and it's UDP. You don't need to worry about TCP, just UDP. Now once you've done that, basically everything is ready to go that you can now make your server online. But again, I always like to suggest trying to kind of organize things to make sure you get them as neatly as possible. So what I'm going to do is show you the config stuff and show you a couple more things to turn on. So we come into here and we go into the server.cfg. Now this time we are going to be commenting out that particular part just there and putting this back in so that it will show up on the actual internet website. You can see that I already had it port forwarded, so I'm no longer doing it locally, I'm doing it online. And we are also going to come down, and this time we are going to turn BattleEye on. So save, close that. We can see here we have both of them running green. So now we're going to once again run the server, show you that everything is working correctly. Hopefully it'll only take a moment or two, or three, maybe five, maybe a moment or five. There we go. So now you can see that it runs a little bit differently because now it initializes the BattleEye server. Everything else still stays the same. So what we do is I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to jump into the game, and I'm going to show you how to connect to the server now. Back in a second. Okay, so here we are again, back in the DayZ login screen. So now we click multiplayer. So we need to change this here to internet, and the way to find the server is to basically filter by the server. So what we want to do is we want to hide any full servers, and for everything else just leave it as normal. Hit OK, and you can see the server appears. Now a lot of the time the server will disappear like that quite quickly. Now that's because it runs some kind of status check on the server to make sure it meets the criteria for it being a correct DayZ server meeting all their criteria. And there's normally some kind of issue with not enough internet bandwidth, or there's something that it checks for, That means your local servers don't appear very often. Back in 1 sec. Okay guys, sorry about that. I had a quick check and it looks as though there's a number, like a big range of other ports that need to be port forwarded to guarantee that this will work properly. Again, I'm not 100% sure that that's a good idea, so my thoughts is that if we just kind of leave this the way that it is and just hit OK, it'll filter, it'll come up, and if you just double click on it, it works. If it disappears, you just have to be a little bit faster. But now we should be able to hit OK, and if everything goes well, it will log in. You can see BattleEye initialized this time. We will click OK. It'll come up waiting for host, and this should initialize the BattleEye, and then it should log in. Now, BattleEye script kicks are something that are quite common in DayZ, and a lot of people just whinge like crazy about how BattleEye works and how BattleEye is broken and all these other different things like that. You can see here that it's working. Your server, your client is up to date. It's looked at your unique client script. That was the OK button that I was saying you sometimes have to click before to make sure it goes in, or else it does it by itself. But I find BattleEye is a tool, and if you set the tool up correctly, it will work very well. You will occasionally get errors, but very unlikely. The things that are most likely to cause errors are people messing with stuff they shouldn't mess with. There are things you can download off the internet that are hack scripts. Bad idea. If you get caught, you get permanently banned and your CD key gets invalidated. Jump. There are also like performance enhancing executables and things you can get. There are lots of people that go, I've never been a hacker, I didn't do anything, I just downloaded this executable that guaranteed me everything would be faster. Sure it did. Those are the things that hackers use to basically con you out of your CD key that works, and then they use it to hack things. So, I mean, just stick with the default game, only download mods and executables from reputable sites, and you should be pretty okay. What I was hoping to find is a vehicle that isn't excessively beaten up, but now that I think about that, seeing that it spawns around about 30 vehicles for the whole map, the chances of that is not exceptionally good. Maybe we could just wait at this bus stop and see if a bus turns up. Where are we? We are... What does that sign say? It says Octopass. I'm sure that meant something important. So we gotta go that way to Kembly Wobo, or that way to Choni Heblin. I really should have checked what my spawn location was, but the Kembly Wobo thing is Kembly Wobo. I'm sure that's like Commisero, and I think the Choni thing is actually like Stolichny or something like that. I'm gonna try to see where the sun is to see what's going on, but this isn't working that well for me anyway. These guys are, well, they would kill me, except I'm going to abort now because this was just a test video anyway. But thank you very much for watching. Like I said, this wasn't a complete video. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how to add additional scripts to your server to allow you to do some really cool things outside of default DayZ. These are not cheat scripts. They are server-side scripts that will allow players to have some functionality that they don't in vanilla. The next thing I'm going to talk about after that is the most common problem that people have when you add those scripts, and that's BattleEye kicking people off the server for hacking. Once I go through the basics of, I guess, explaining those two things, that's a cool tank. Yeah, once I go through the basics of explaining those two things, that should give you pretty much everything you know to host your own server. So again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, Astocky out.